Welcome to another edition of Frank and Candid on this Friday. TGIF, as we say. Hope all is well. We're all set for a weekend up and coming. As usual on a Friday, we take it a little easy, but we have some different plans for today. But let me quickly look at just one item in the news that I thought I should share with you. Just because of the type of item it is. Donald Trump, in an interview, attacked the Biden administration for being too accepting of Haitian migrants. He said that the Haitian immigrants are bringing AIDS into the U.S. He said the U.S. must have a death wish, even though there's really no evidence that this is a real problem and not really a decade of old racist myth. Trump called Haiti some time ago a S-hole country. That was back in 2018. And now he has taken this type of talk, hatred of the 95% black nation, to another level. And this was an interview on Fox just last night. And he said, take a look at what's happening in Haiti. A tremendous problem with AIDS. Many of those people will probably have AIDS, and they're coming into our country, and we don't do anything about it. And concluded, we must have a death wish here in America. All right, that's the world today. Okay, that's it. Look at just an item in the news. Okay, we talk a lot about the sustainability of our planet and all the things we need to do in our fight against climate change, and how we need to protect the environment, things we should do to reduce the effects and keep our world in a livable state for the future. In other words, we are in a fight for the sustainability of our planet. And each nation, each community can and should do their part in their little corner to help in this fight. And this morning, we will get into a conversation about the efforts in our little corner on Nevis in this regard. So joining me for this conversation by telephone from across the waters in Nevis is Miss Kenisha Lewis of Sustainable Nevis. And let me bring her in and say good morning. Miss Lewis, good morning.
Good morning. Hi.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Good. Now, let's talk about Sustainable Nevis.
Yes.
Who is? What is?
Okay, well, Sustainable Nevis is a group of various organizations and individuals on the island who see the need for us to be more proactive in reducing plastic litter in our environment, and ultimately to be sustainable overall, not just when it comes to plastic management. So we have members like representatives from the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society, Solid Waste Nevis, Environment in Nevis, the Charleston Secondary Environmental Awareness Society, and many other interested organizations whose ambition it is to ensure that we are sustainable in Nevis.
One of the as you mentioned, one of the big things that we've talked about, not just on Nevis, but throughout the region and the world, is the issue, yes, of plastic. And how do we, what are some of the ideas that we have in your committee or your organization to reduce the use and recycle and that kind of thing?
Okay. I like your question and I like your emphasis on reduce. Our ultimate objective is to reduce our dependence on our use of single-use plastic. So a working slogan at the moment is do something drastic, reduce our use of single-use plastic. It's a working one, so we're going to finalize it. But the objective is ultimately to move away from plastics that are not necessary. Some plastic use is necessary.
Okay.
We are aiming for what plastics we must use. The objective is then to recycle it. Or if we can find a way to reuse it in a way where we delay its life in a landfill, then that is our objective. So everybody knows the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. The best of the 3 R's is to never generate plastic waste in the first place. And so reduce means that we're not generating greenhouse gases. We do not have to concern ourselves with the end life of the material. But if we cannot meet reduce, and that requires lifestyle changes, and that takes time, our objective at this time is to recycle but encourage reduction.
Okay. How does how businesses can play a part in it? Supermarkets and those businesses that tend to always give you plastic, how can they play a part in this?
Okay, well, some businesses are encouraging and offering reusable bags for customers. Now, for me, there is research, quite a bit of research actually, to show that the life of a reusable bag, you'd have to use it for quite some time to meet the greenhouse gas emission levels or the equivalent for plastic bags. So plastic bags are, in that respect, potentially better in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than other types of bags. For example, a reusable cotton bag, we often tend to grow cotton with pesticides, and it uses a lot of water. But the advantage all of the other types have over plastic is the end life. So the end life of these reusable bags, they will eventually decompose. But plastics, on the other hand, we know are not readily decomposable, and they gum up our system. So we find them in our waterways, we find them flying around the place. They become a problem. We're finding them more and more in the human body and in the organisms that we consume. So that is where plastic becomes the big loser. So when it comes to supermarkets, yes, they could offer reusable bags, but even then, if you know yourself and you know others around you, many people already have the reusable bags. They are just not incentivized to bring them with them. So they use them, forget them at home, and then don't use them. So I don't know necessarily if we should keep encouraging the purchase of reusable bags, but we should be encouraging people to be more conscientious and bring the bags they do have. We can also look at concepts like upcycling. So if you have a dress and you really love that dress, but it's now falling apart, perhaps take parts of that dress or whatever you have and convert that into a bag, which then you're upcycling it, so it's staying longer from a landfill and it now has a secondary use. So individually we can look at that. As for supermarkets and other organizations, not everything needs to be double bagged. Ask the people if they actually do need a bag. In some cases, when I've been shopping and I did not intend to shop or bought more than I intended to, I asked one of the managers for a box and if I could get a box. And so that's one of the ways we can reduce our dependence on plastics, because we do take a lot of plastic bags, and what happens is people have plastic bags at home, and a plastic bag is holding a whole heap of plastic bags, and you get more plastic bags, and so they just build up. And at some point, you're not generating that much garbage. You just don't have a use for it, and so you end up tossing it. So at the supermarket, we can be proactive in saying, no, we do not need that bag, and supermarket individuals can actually be proactive in asking, do we need that bag? Because some people, I've met persons when we've done surveys before that say if they're actually asked, they would pause, but sometimes the people already put their one little item down in the bag, and so they just take the bag. But if you ask them if they need a bag for this one or two items, many people, there are some who will say no and walk away with the items in their bag. So on their end, they can be proactive in distributing less of the bags to begin with.
I hear you, and as I listen to you talk about plastics, I see that in some cases plastics are useful, and so to me you have a whole balancing act there.
Yes.
When it comes to plastic use or not.
Yes.
How much education, I mean, today's program is good, but how much education are you involved in Nevis when it comes to this?
Okay, well, our objective with the group, the Sustainable Nevis group, is that we will educate, and we're reaching out directly right now at this moment to many of the supermarkets and looking at their willingness to adjust and change behaviors. But my individual group, the Charleston Secondary Environmental Awareness Society, we would have taken some survey data before, and we would have interviewed people directly. Before we had this shutdown, we would have gathered data. And what we found was that many persons are aware of the environmental concerns of plastics. There are many who do not like to see them flying about the place, but it's also a convenience that and an expectation that they have. In addition to that, I don't know how much education will need to play a role, because people do already understand that plastics are not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And so the role now of education would be to say, okay, you see it as an inconvenience now that oh my goodness, I have to turn back because I plan to go shopping and I left my bags inside the house. Let me turn back and get those bags. That might be considered for you an annoyance or an inconvenience, but what we need to now let people understand is the dollar value and the health implications and the other costs and inconvenience that we may not be measuring and that you're also paying for. You're paying every time plastic has to end up in a drain and people have to go and clean it out when it blocks up a waterway and your community floods.
Mm-hmm.
So, and businesses and workplaces can play a better role. There is a balance, as you indicated. So one of the things I would have suggested is having a water filter area, a water fountain area that people can come and collect water. But because of COVID, plastics give us the convenience of being more sanitary in that things are packaged and separated. But in workplace and in places where we could manage people just bringing their own refillable containers, then why give out a whole heap of plastic bottles whenever people have group meetings and all these things? So it's not just going to be the educating the general public, it's educating business and other organizations. They don't necessarily have to keep giving out the small little plastic bottles with a little bit of water in them. They can look at having refill stations when it's safe to do so. And if they must give out water, it's actually better. Sometimes I'll go to places and people will take 2 or 3 bottles of water because they're there all day. And they gave out small little bottles. It is actually better because I'm saving on bottle cap covers. We don't necessarily visualize that. But that's 3 bottle cap covers versus 1 if I use a larger bottle than a small bottle. And so it's just little things along the way, the intricacies that persons may not consider, but I find that our general public is well educated. They are aware of the impacts, the implications of plastics. So it's just all those nuanced things that we now need to get out there and address, and trying to make it easier for people to transition to reduced plastic use.
Is there a measurable difference in terms of your challenge over there on Nevis when it comes to plastic bags versus plastic bottles? Both a problem, but is there, in your observation, a measurable difference that you can see as far as how people use these two things?
The use of them, to be honest,
and dispose of them.
There's no. You find both all around the place. So we've done cleanups, and I would do walkthroughs and cleanups in my community. And I've literally walked down the road picking up the waste along the way, and I turn back and there's a plastic bag flying again in front of me. In that case, it was a bread bag. So nowadays in Nevis, they drive around and they deliver bread, and the bread is already in the plastic bag.
Right.
And this is where the past, and you need that balance with the future. Now we consider COVID and all these things, but it's just a matter of the person giving you the bread using sanitary practices, because in the past people would have their cloth bag and you'd go outside with your cloth bag and get your bread. And the difference is a millisecond from them just passing you a plastic bag with the bread in there to them taking out the bread and putting it into your bag. So I do understand with these unique circumstances and the COVID situation that it's an extra step towards making things more sanitary. But there are just some practices that we had in the past that were way more sustainable, but the convenience of plastic has made us move away from it.
Yeah, times have certainly changed. I could attest to that. When I was growing up, I went to the shop to get bread with my bag. So there was no plastic that I got the bread in, but times have changed, and COVID is even more so. What about are you guys in making any efforts or believe in or support legislation when it comes to plastic use?
It is necessary to support legislation. I believe in legislation personally, and it's necessary to support legislation because from the feedback we've gotten from different organizations, it's that some of them are willing, but they're concerned about the response of customers if they reduce and say, no, we won't offer this bag, or we're going to offer fewer bags, because they've now gotten into the habit of taking the plastic bags or taking things in plastic bottles, whatever it is. So that convenience that people have and the expectation, it is now necessary that it is legislated to ultimately to reduce plastic consumption on the island, because businesses are afraid of the blowback. Businesses are afraid that customers will complain and that they will not, they will move to somebody else, and you don't want to hurt your business ultimately. So if it's legislated and everybody has to do it as a business, then there's no distinction between one or the other, and you don't lose your customers. My attitude towards it as well is that, especially in Nevis, we don't hold grudges very well. So it's true. So people will be upset, and you hear them cussing about something that a government did or something did, and then a week passes and something else happened and they've moved on. They can't adjust. So it's necessary that we just make it so that the people adjust. But there's also political, there's going to be political concerns with that.
So all those are challenges you got to deal with. You know, the idea of plastic bottles came in some time ago as a more of an economic approach for people like the bottling company, for example, made a decision to go from the glass bottle to the plastic bottle for a lot of reasons. It's lighter and all kinds of reasons, mostly economics.
Yeah, it is lighter, so it's easier to transport around the place. You're less likely to be injured from broken glass, and you do have to consider worker safety as well. And so the bottles, and it's sanitary. You know, in the past, once the glass bottles came back, they would have to go through the sanitization process, etc. With the plastic bottles that they use now, you have the preformed structure that you just essentially blow up, and you get the shape of the bottle you want, and it's just much easier to manage to load them onto a truck to do everything along the way. So there are certainly benefits and other things that came into that decision making. But there's a concept in environmental impact assessments and other studies that talks about cradle to grave. And so when you look at a product, you have to consider the inception, the life of that product. What does it involve? And what are my environmental impacts when I make this material? What will be the life of my product? When we focus on single-use plastics, it's because they don't have a long life. So after using them once, they're now heading towards the landfill if there's no intermission in between. So the cradle to grave concept looked at making the material, the life of that product, and then the grave part, what do I do with that product or material once I'm done with it? And where we are falling short is the grave component of it. So the plastic bottles, you asked, is there a measured difference between plastic bags and plastic bottles and other things? There is none, because when I walk around, I see both plastic bottles and plastic bags, and they're running down guts or they're flying through the air. They look, I do believe that some people literally see it as decorative, because I've cleaned up an area and I come back a day later, not that long, and there's a plastic bottle again. And I wonder to myself, maybe they thought, they looked at it and they thought, something is missing here. What's missing? Let me just throw this down. I do not know the mentality of the persons who see a clean area and decide they will litter, but that's the case. And so it's the end life of the product. And so there are some parts of the world where the responsibility and onus is placed on the businesses that distributed them in the first place. So whether it's through taxation or they have to ensure that their materials do not end up in the environment, what is happening after I sell my product is something they must also consider. And if we're not putting that responsibility on the sellers, then that responsibility must be picked up by the government and the individuals. So what is the grave? Yeah.
Well, when it comes to plastic bottles, for example, I remember many years ago I saw some information that came to me out of Trinidad and Tobago, where they were willing to accept plastic bottles because they had a use for them. I think what they did was they grind them up and put them into the asphalt, making the asphalt stronger, which to me was a possible way of, getting rid of some of these bottles that people are just throwing away. Because if we had a situation where it is, it is beneficial, just as the bottles from the brewery are beneficial to somebody picking them up because they get paid.
Yeah.
They get paid a couple of cents or whatever for bottle, and there's a use for it. Then maybe those are things that we can think about, finding a use for them so that people are more apt to hold on to them or take them to a collection site.
Yeah.
What are we doing about collection sites and bottles?
Okay, so we are planning to have various collection sites around the island. Official launch was delayed for this project, but we're hoping that very soon we can have an official launch. However, in terms of collection sites, some collection sites will be all year round, some will be temporary. So at CSS, we will again start to take materials, but we cannot, and this is one of the things we want to emphasize, is that when the periods when school are closed, there's no one there to manage the waste. So we are not there to stop it from flying around. We're not there to sort it and ensure that it ends up where it's supposed to be. So there will be sites that are intended to be permanent, and we're aiming to get sponsorship to get bins set up and everything like that. And there will be sites such as the school site that is more temporary.
But you see, those collection sites and the collection efforts, people, as a practical matter, we're depending on people to be nice.
Yes.
But without incentives, people sometimes don't care. In certain jurisdictions, for example, you would see on the bottle that there's a 5 cents or whatever for returning a bottle to a site. Do we have incentives that anywhere? Because we're really depending on the good heart and the cleaning up the environment kind of attitude.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're basically looking at, rather than reduction, so reduction of the plastics, risk reduction, whatever it is associated with those plastics, we're more reactive. So we're looking at managing the issue once it's been created. So you are absolutely right with that. And yes, people do have certain behaviors that have to be overcome. So there are plans in future to ensure that the drop-off site is secure. We're looking at bins that will make it just one or two more steps difficult for you to throw litter or unwanted things inside there. You have to make an effort to do that. So there are some measures we're looking into, and of course we will have signage as well, indicating what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, because plastic bags, for example, are not generally recycled anywhere. They are like the last stage of plastic recycling.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about plastics, and plastics are a major concern in the environment, like we said, because they do not biodegrade easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so we focus our efforts and discussion on that. But many materials are better at being recycled. If I have an aluminum can, if we go on a structural atomic level, is just made from aluminum. Okay? Mm-hmm. Plastics, on the other hand, you talked about Trinidad taking them back and integrating into the asphalt. Plastics began with oil, with crude oil products that were separated out.
Right, yeah.
And crude oil products contain carbon and hydrogen, and then we also add chlorine, so your PVC, polyvinyl chlorides, all these things. So it's made up of multiple elements or multiple things. I'll try to keep my language simple. Multiple things joined together, whereas an aluminum can is just an aluminum can. And so every time we recycle, we break up the multiple things that we had joined together. And when you try to put them back, they're not as strong the next time around.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately, all plastics end up becoming plastics that we cannot find a final use for in that form. You talked about Trinidad incorporating it in asphalt. There are other things we can do with it for certain.
Okay.
There are techniques called pyrolysis where we'll try to get energy from it. Remember that it came from an energy source.
Right.
And so through the right chemistry, we can change it back into an energy source that we can then use rather than getting more raw fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
So there are options out there in the world. Some of it is that at this time, the technology may not be fully developed, or in our case, we do not have the large-scale access to it, because it has been done on the islands, both of them before, and I think it's still being done in St. Kitts, pyrolysis. But the scale cannot accommodate the amount of materials we have in St. Kitts at Nevis at this time, and it requires investment. And as small nations, dealing with the plastic waste issue, dealing with so many other issues, we do not have the financial means to really invest in everything that should have investment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hold that thought, Ms. Lewis. We'll be right back. We'll continue this conversation after this quick break.
Okay.
It's the end of Summer Madness sale, and it's only at Courts Optical for a limited time only. Buy one pair of glasses and get the second pair free. Plus, if you come in before September 17th, you will get an extra 30% discount or special offer when you trash your old pair of frames in the Optical Price Bin. No cash, no problem. Shop with Ready Finance and pay $0 for 60 days. Plus, walk away with a free pair of sunglasses. Make an appointment online today at courtsoptical.com and ask us about our free blue block and free eye exams. Beat the summer blues and save on your new eyewear with our end of summer madness sale. Terms and conditions apply. Optical, value you can see.
Welcome back to Frank and Candid. I'm Tony Nice. We're having a conversation with Miss Kenisha Lewis of Sustainable Nevis on the efforts on Nevis to reuse, recycle, all in an effort to save our planet. Miss Lewis, you still with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Your efforts, like all good efforts, are not cheap. they cost money to accomplish a lot of things we want to do. How much support are you getting from business and public, financial or otherwise?
Okay, for Sustainable Nevis, currently we're working without any financial contributions.
Okay.
It's persons giving freely of their time. and it's persons using what we already have. In the future, as we expand, we do hope and that we will get more contributions from other organizations. I did mention one of the measures. It's not a financial contribution per se, but at the supermarkets, they will now be asking persons if they would prefer to use a reusable bag instead, if they would like to purchase one, or if they have one already. And ultimately, we can reduce the double bagging and things like that. We're also applying for funding from an organization in Taiwan, the Taiwanese government. So we're hoping we can get assistance there in terms of the bins I mentioned, and to extend the amount of drop-off sites we have. But as you correctly said, generally when the scale that we're hoping to attain and the type of campaign we want to change hearts and minds with time, it requires some investment, some financial investment. But as for now, we're working without any financial distribution and looking at the goodwill of others. So the container, it's somebody allowing us to use their container to ship it, the boat, all these are various agreements and willingness from citizens within our community.
What about what would be your overall assessment to date with regards to your efforts from the Nevis community?
Okay, well, there are within the Nevis community quite a few conscientious groups and individuals. So there are other groups that we're hoping maybe to integrate, but you have like the Nevis fisherfolk. Plastics are really a hindrance to what they're trying to achieve. And there are other organizations that we need to incorporate for one reason or another. But in terms of the public, their reception of it and what we have been able to accomplish so far, it is a slow process. Unless there are rewards being given, so unless people actually see the money that you talked about earlier, or persons are, there's some punitive response, we don't get quick changes in behavior. Changes in behavior that we want, desire changes in behavior that comes through education takes time. And so I can say since we have started doing this, we do have more conscientious persons. So primarily we have contact with persons in the school and some businesses and organizations around Charlestown, as well as when we did that survey, we would have connected with citizens. But people are aware, but again, it's the convenience thing of plastic that makes many people not take that extra step. So it's in terms of the society and the adopting this lifestyle, it's going to take time. We get changes in behavior, as I said, from punishment, rewards, or through education, but education is the slow route. And we're hoping ultimately to change the values of the people. And so we're looking, and since we don't have the legislation in place, we're looking at the slow route. There has been some impact. We see changes in the school society and other changes with other groups, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah, have you been in the talking about education? Have the schools been involved? Education been involved, like as in the ministry?
Okay, well, in 2016, and you should have recognized, if you have anybody in school, there have been changes to the curriculum of the schools, and they're trying to make it a more inclusive curriculum. One of the goals then was to make it so that citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis are good global citizens. And the way we defined that was ultimately that they care about the environment, they care about the well-being of others. And so in the development of the curriculum, there is greater emphasis on health and other things that are important, but there is more emphasis on education again, and that emphasis that we may have lost when it comes to the environment. So I remember being in primary school, and one of my teachers had on the wall, cleanliness is next to godliness. But those are not things that are emphasized necessarily anymore. You don't see that signage anymore, and it's been a push towards perhaps more abstract or higher, what we might perceive to be higher education goals and objectives. But for me, as an environmental science teacher and as a science teacher, it's quite important that the environment be considered a higher level objective. And so in that meeting that they had in 2016, the emphasis from the education system in St. Kitts and Nevis was to make holistic, better citizens who are good global citizens, good local citizens. And to do that, one of the things that was emphasized was definitely the environment. And like I said, it takes time. It's been taking time for them to change their curriculum, and it takes time to change behaviors that are already quite ingrained. So, but there is effort, there is emphasis in schools. They're offering more programs when it comes to the environment. It's integrated more into the safety syllabus as well. So, yes, there are some changes being made.
Okay, that's great. If someone listening to this program wants to join in this effort, like the effort, want to support the effort, you encourage that, and how can they?
Okay, I absolutely, of course, we'll encourage that, and we will take genuine help as needed. It's any assistance, once it's genuine, you can reach out. It could be financial. Like we said, we don't necessarily have all the financial resources we need. It could be your time. It could be that you're an educator. It could be that you're willing to walk around. You can make signage. Whatever it is you can do, you can help with assisting at the drop-off points, over at Long Point. Whatever is necessary, we'd be happy to take that help. For now, they can reach out to the Nevis Tourism Authority, and that number is listed. They are a statutory body, so they can reach out to them, and they can be guided accordingly as to where we need help and what can be done, and anything they feel, anything we may not have thought of, because ideas are always good. Anything we may not have thought of, we welcome that contribution.
There's just, I take it there's just at the moment one drop-off point?
There's just yes,
Okay.
when we have the official launch, all the drop-off points on the island will be indicated. But in terms of the point where everything ultimately goes and then makes its way to St. Kitts, there's only one station like that. But like I said, the school and some other stations will be drop-off points.
Okay, got you. All right, okay. Before you go, is there anything you want to leave and emphasize for our listening audience that you're free to do so?
Okay. For me, what I want to emphasize is, first of all, we all have good intentions, but not every type of plastic is recyclable. So you can take small steps now that make a big difference. So if you are buying takeout food, for example, and they offer you a plastic fork and you know you're going directly home, don't accept the plastic fork and spoon. So one of the things we can do is really just take that millisecond to pause to think, do I really need this thing? And if I absolutely need it, how will I manage my waste in future? We will find a lot of the times the things that we're willing to take, the plastics, whatever it is, we did not need them. And I know in some cases people take the plastic forks, but when they go home, they still use their own metal forks anyway.
Right.
But yeah, and as it becomes safer to do so, we can look at other measures, such as taking our own reusable containers to some places and let them fill that rather than the styrofoam.
Styrofoam is an issue as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Styrofoam is a major issue, and it's not easily recycled at all.
Right.
There are problems with it being contaminated because food was in it to begin with, and recycling is done by weight, and so because styrofoam is lightweight, you don't get much value from it. You have to get a lot of styrofoam to get value. And so that is just something that ends up in our environment. It is quite toxic when it starts to break down. So what I want to emphasize for persons is that we think before we purchase it, before we do it, if we intend to purchase, take your reusable bag. Take that moment to think and ask, do I need this extra bit of plastic? Can I take it in my hand? Do I have another option? Think about our options. I think we're all creative enough to come up with alternatives to the plastics and take the small measures and steps to start to reduce our consumption.
You see, I take it you're optimistic about the future of your efforts, right?
Well, you have to be optimistic or then you just give up.
Okay. All right, Ms. Lewis, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all that information with us. And we will encourage people to take that message, follow up on that message, and contact you and join in the fight to save our planet. If you can, you gave me a phone number. If you can give that again, just one more time, how they can reach you. I would really like to see more support coming your way.
Okay, thank you. So from me, I would just recommend, and they would have multiple lines, to just reach out directly to the Nevis Tourism Authority, and that information can be quickly gathered online, or you can connect with, through the government lines, and connect with Nevis Tourism Authority, who reached out to us initially to get an idea of how to go about this, and together, along with other groups, we've started to coordinate this effort. So we don't have a centralized group at this time or a centralized place. So that's the best one that can field many questions.
Okay.
So the Nevis Tourism Authority.
All right. Take you so much, Ms. Lewis.
You're very welcome.
It's great talking to you. Best of luck to you. All right. Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll just wrap up our Frank and Candid for today with some comments. All good information there coming from Miss Lewis with regards to that's Miss Kenisha Lewis, Sustainable Nevis, the Sustainable Nevis Committee. They are tasked with to reduce, reuse, and recycle, and they're looking to see if they can get full support for a ban on single-use plastics. And a whole lot of information there with regards to that. And we will hope and wish them all the best as they move forward, because we certainly have to protect our planet, and there are some simple things we can do with regards to that. We just get attached to all these conveniences, and let's not fight that. They're quite convenient, plastics are, and since it is one of those inventions that has proven to be quite convenient, but quite a problem for our environment, quite a problem for our marine life. I've seen a whole lot of plastics that end up in the sea around us, especially as a person who fish for a hobby off the land. I mean, sometimes there's so much plastic there, you're pulling in plastic, as a matter of fact, sometimes, as opposed to fish, which is what you went there for in the first place, right? So along with that, we're also seeing all these styrofoam, and part of the problem is us, because we take these things and do not dispose of them in a proper way, and so they end up in places where they should not end up, and creating problems for us in terms of how the place looks, and we're trying to keep our communities clean, right? But that doesn't help, apart from the other environmental issues that is created with respect to that. So, talking about sustainability of our planet, and each nation, each community can and should be there and to do their part in their little corner to help with the fight in this regard. So, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we will wrap up our session today on Frank and Candid right after this. We'll be back in a moment.
Summer Madness Sale, and it's only at Courts Optical for a limited time only. Buy one pair of glasses and get the second pair free. Plus, if you come in before September 17th, you will get an extra 30% discount or special offer when you trash your old pair of frames in the optical price bin. No cash, no problem. Shop with Ready Finance and pay $0 for 60 days. Plus, walk away with a free pair of sunglasses. Make an appointment online today at courtsoptical.com and ask us about our free blue block and free eye exams. Beat the summer blues and save on your new eyewear with our end of summer madness sale. Terms and conditions apply. Optical, value you can see.
Every Saturday from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Said Radio goes into overdrive with the Magic Fingers Ronnie Rascal Mega Mix Show. You heard? Lock your dial to 96.1 FM. It's the show that brings the vibes to your Saturday afternoon lime, bar hopping, party hangouts, or just driving around. You don't want to miss the Saturday Mega Mix Show. You don't want to miss the Saturday Mega Mix Show. It's old school and new school remixes by yours truly, Magic Fingers, Ronnie Rascal, every Saturday from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. ZIZ Radio.
In the house.
Welcome back to Frank and Candid on this Friday, start to the weekend, and we just had a conversation with our guests from across the water in Nevis, Sustainable Nevis, and talking about the reuse and recycle of plastics and all those pollutants that we have to deal with. Let's see if we can get a couple of calls in here before we go for this Friday. We got a caller there. If we do, we'll take it. All right. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Knight.
Yes, sir.
How are you today?
I am well.
The environment is a challenge, and we must save our planet. Our conscience has already been pricked as to the damage that us humans has caused for our survival or not being extinct. So I'm all allowed her effort in terms of plastic, but it goes even beyond plastic, because this morning I got up and I thought it was, looking at the eastern hills, I thought it was the rain would be coming over,
Mm-hmm.
and this haze, it's slightly dissipating, but this haze, it is natural, as we heard in our forecast that there's a haze, like, how we say, well, the Saharan dust comes across from time to time, and these are challenges within our environment, in more ways than. The lady spoke about styrofoam and all of that. I am giving my concerted effort. It's consistent. Sometimes restaurants moving away from the styrofoam now, and they're finding other means to accommodate their customers and the like. So that's another thing. I just purchased some bamboo toothbrush rather. So I'm doing my own little thing, in terms of moving away from it. But there's so many other things I use plastic for. And plastic products, But we are challenged, and we must save our planet if we are to live on this planet for however long. So it's all good. I was wondering we know that on St. Kitts and there are concerted effort, but what is the collaboration within that effort? Because the lady spoke about ideas are welcome. How can St. Kitts and Nevis pull together, brainstorm together, so we can extrapolate best practices and put them into what the plans are going forward. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you. We got another call. Let's take that. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, caller. You're live. Okay. Let's try this one. Good morning. Welcome to Frank and Candid.
Yeah, good morning. What the discussion up for this morning? I just tuned in. Anything?
We were talking about our use of plastics and recycling and saving our planet, getting rid of plastics.
Okay. This is. I just want to interject this here. I was just speaking to somebody in Canada a while ago, and while there was in a restaurant, and before they were being served, they were asked to show the ID, the COVID ID. I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, you can't get served unless you show your COVID ID." So I said to myself that this thing is really becoming the norm now. I mean, it's like you can't do business unless you have you're being vaccinated. I mean, if this ever reaches this stage down here where you tell you can't come into, I don't believe we could do that here because we have a small community, and by you saying that, I think you lose business. You tell people they can't shop unless they're vaccinated. But we just have to wait and see. But I was surprised when I heard that, because if that whatever the case here, anybody try to push that, the things are going to be politics. But I hope to God that this doesn't reach here where you have to, for you to shop, you have to show an ID that you're being vaccinated. I just thought this should just interject that. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Well, if we got a serious breakout, we won't have any business either. Let's go back to the phones. Good morning. Welcome.
Mr. Nias, good morning.
Good morning.
You couldn't said it any better. Morning to you, sir. I like this morning's, programming, of course, and quite an interesting guest. He's talking about our way of life, our environment. The truth is, she did emphasize about the plastic stopping our waterways and then build up and become flooding the community. Equal to that, as all these people who goes around cutting people's lawn, the grass, they leave the trains on the side of the road dirty. Only takes a build-up process over time. The water trickles down, the roadway blocks, flooding our community. And I have said to solid waste on the air, when they are on Win FM on Tuesday, they don't accept calls anymore. They're dodging something. They need to at least collaborate with the health department, because those are the two entities that somewhat are responsible, if not concerned about the environment. The truth is, it doesn't happen. And a lot of entity around here needs to collaborate. I don't know why. If somebody is thinking that they're stealing their gold or whatever the case may be. But these things need to be taking place, because as I speak, there is a drain in Cunningham Street, which once water used to come from the Cunningham Hospital, goes all the way down to the shoreline in Irishtown. There is a cane field, so to speak, semi-cane field growing in the drain. On the other side to the south, there's the health department. I am wondering, do they really walk that street? The people who work in the health department, do they get out the offices and walk around in the neighborhood, in the community, to see these things, what it is that they don't see people speak about? I don't understand. So many of us in authority is responsible for things on the outside. And people that we have working with us, they do not supervise. They don't get out the office and look around and make any rights to observe what it is taking place in the community and neighborhood. They need to get out their offices, man. People are too comfortable sitting under the offices and working and in pay and not being productive. Mr. Nias, I thank you for listening. Sir.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Thank you for that input. All right, and that's going to do it for us today and for this week on Frank and Candid. I'm Tony Nias, and I do appreciate all of your inputs, your calls. And we'll be back next week, if it is to be, with much more right here on Frank and Candid. Go on out, enjoy the weekend, pay attention to the protocols, stay safe. We want you back here on Monday. See you.